One day, an 11th grader named Nikolai arrives at school and immediately finds himself in conflict with his classmate Victor. Victor is upset because an unkind remark about their shared crush, Nastia, has shown up on the board. Victor drags Nikolai into the classroom, but Nikolai announces to everyone that this is trivial compared to what's coming their way. After all, an alien spacecraft is already on its way to Earth. However, the pilot made an error and landed in the wrong place, accidentally intercepting a signal from Nikolai's best friend, an avid gamer named Fima. Thanks to this mix-up, Earth will soon be invited to join the Star Federation, which will rapidly advance progress in all fields of knowledge and medicine. Yet, by 2110, military conflicts will erupt with the Cosmic Pirate Alliance, led by Glot, a figure who can manipulate time. Humanity will endure tough battles until a special unit, led by Kira, is deployed into action. She will track down Glot and ultimately sacrifice herself to eliminate him. Kira will leave behind a daughter, Alice, who will attend the same school as Nikolai, but 100 years in the future. Alice, however, finds school utterly uninspiring. A few of her classmates, who are of alien origin, reach out to her, offering friendship, but her mind is elsewhere. That day, she comes home, greets her robot assistant, Vither, and proudly shows off new bracelets that can create combat simulations. Vither immediately helps her pass a level, battling 3 space pirates at once. Just then, her father, Professor Sesf, appears in the simulation and accidentally takes a hit to the nose. Alice quickly stops the fight to help him, and her father notices the bracelet, which turns out to be a gift from the military academy named after her mother, where Alice has applied for admission. Her father is furious about her decision, but Alice reminds him that her mother's body was never found after the battle, meaning she could very well be somewhere in the past. Alice then takes her father to the tree growing in the center of his biolab, where a distinct heart shape, carved a century ago, is visible in the bark. Could this be a message from her mother? Moreover, the robot has already identified a similar-looking woman in the past, a physics teacher in Moscow named Margarita, who happens to be Nikolai's teacher. In her time, Margarita hurries to the classroom, where the boys are still arguing. Realizing what's happening, the teacher steps in and breaks up the fight, giving Nikolai a stern warning and ordering him to erase the offensive comment from the board. Nikolai and Fima go to the classroom, but the permanent marker won't come off. Determined, Nikolai heads to the lab for a stronger solution, breaking into the room and climbing to the top shelf where some vials are stored. He accidentally drops a lens filled with liquid, which falls in slow motion to the floor. Puzzled by the strange effect, Nikolai examines the wall and finds a hidden safe, inside which he discovers a box holding something peculiar, a small, galaxy-like object. Suddenly, the object absorbs into Nikolai's hand, and he begins to convulse as a voice whispers that the Cassian has resurfaced in the system. Terrified, Nikolai rushes out into the corridor and then straight outside as Nikolai stumbles through the schoolyard. He realizes everything looks different. There are aliens scattered around. Eventually, he bumps into Alice, who instinctively uses a defensive move, flipping him onto the ground. Dazed, Nikolai looks up at her, struggling to find words. He mentions feeling unwell, which amuses Alice, who jokingly asks if his biodata chip is malfunctioning. Not catching her sarcasm, Nikolai asks for an ambulance. Alice then realizes something is off, especially given his strange clothing. When he shows her his ID badge, she encourages him to look around. Realizing he's somehow in the future, Nikolai faints. Meanwhile, in a distant space prison, a pirate known as Jolly, due to his constant laughter, escapes from his cell and approaches Glot, the infamous space pirate. Jolly informs Glot that he's been chosen as the captain of the Alliance, but Glot reminds him that without the Cassian, they won't stand a chance at conquering even the least developed planets. Sensing its presence, Glot agrees to work with Jolly, and together, they break free. Using his psychic abilities, Glot compels the guards to self-destruct, allowing them to escape. Back in the future, Nikolai regains consciousness, startled by a robot named Werther. Alice confirms to him that it's the year 2124, showing him a view of the futuristic city with blossoming sakura trees and gleaming white bridges. She explains that humans now control the climate, artificial meat is the norm, and machines are used as needed. Just then, Professor SNV arrives, analyzing Nikolai and discovering that his body contains exotic matter with variable gravity, what they call the Cassian. Nikolai describes where he found this strange object, and Alice realizes that his physics teacher, Margarita, is actually her mother. Professor SNV then shows Alice a letter from her missing mother, who reveals that the Cassian caused her to end up in the year 2014. She explains that time travel with the Cassian is limited to exactly 100-year jumps. She changed her identity and went into hiding to evade the space pirates, asking Alice to take care of her father and assuring her that she's proud of her. Heartbroken, Alice runs off, and Nikolai follows. Sitting under a tree, Alice confides her feelings to her virtual father. Werther guides Nikolai to her, explaining that meeting oneself in a different time can lead to a continuum breakdown. At that moment, Glot and the pirates arrive. Glot captures Nikolai using his mental abilities, but Werther manages to activate an alarm. Glot remarks that they can't retrieve the Cassian while Nikolai is alive, and Jolly prepares his weapon. Alice rushes to fight, wielding bionic arms. Professor Envy appears, trying to intervene, but Nikolai, under Glot's control, shoots him. A surge of energy triggers, altering reality, and Alice, Nikolai, and the pirates suddenly find themselves on a highway in 2024. Alice and Nikolai escape, pursued by Jolly, who jumps onto cars in hot pursuit. Werther assists them, but when Jolly finally catches up and strikes Alice with a sword, it turns out to be her hologram. Furious, Jolly cuts Werther in half. Frustrated, he complains to Glot, who then takes control of a motorcyclist, knocking Jolly down. Despite the fall, Jolly finds Nikolai's ID card on the ground, realizing which school he attends and deciding he doesn't need Glot's help to capture him. Meanwhile, Nikolai and Alice flee via subway. Nikolai takes Alice to his home, explaining to his mother that Alice lost her keys and needs a place to stay. His mother allows her to spend the night. Later, Nikolai shyly admits that he writes rap songs about Alice, leaving her genuinely touched. Meanwhile, Jolly tries to reach the school, but taxi drivers assume he's out of his mind. Frustrated, Jolly grabs a smartphone with the route already mapped out from one of the drivers and sets off on foot. Elsewhere, Kira, the physics teacher, sees a news report about the highway incident and instantly recognizes the pirate, Jolly. The next morning, Nikolai arrives at school with Alice, where their classmate, Nastya, mistakes Alice for Nikolai's new girlfriend and begins teasing them, blocking their way. Nikolai soon spots Kira, the physics teacher, and runs over to tell her what happened, but she notices Fima and seems confused, knowing he should be at Nikolai's apartment gaming. Their conversation is interrupted as Jolly appears, proposing to settle things peacefully, but Kira immediately engages in a brawl, sending everything around them into chaos. Eventually, Kira and the group, Alice, Nikolai, Fima, Nastya, and her new boyfriend Victor, barricade themselves in the physics classroom. When Jolly breaks through, Alice asks Nikolai to use the Cassian to transport them to the future, but it can only activate under intense emotions. As the pirate crashes through the wall, Alice kisses Nikolai, triggering the temporal vortex. While Jolly is distracted, Kira takes the opportunity to sever his arm, and the entire team is transported to the future. But instead of a paradise, they find a ruined school and battle drones hovering outside. Kira strikes one of the robots, revealing Werther, the assistant bot, beneath its exterior. He explains the reason for the world's transformation. In the original timeline, Fima went to Nikolai's apartment on the day of Nikolai's first jump to the future for a gaming tournament, inadvertently receiving a signal from a lost alien courier that led to Earth joining the Star Federation. But in this altered reality, Glot, who arrived in the past, directed Fima to school instead, intercepting the signal himself and transforming Earth into a pirate stronghold where humans work as slaves. Werther leads them to Jolly, who, despite having aged over 100 years, reveals that he saved Werther by disguising him as a pirate bot. Kira doesn't trust him initially, but Jolly convinces the group he's been harboring a grudge against Glot for betraying him. Even though a sworn oath prevents him from harming Glot himself, they realize that if they destroy Glot, the timeline will reset. Since Fima received the signal 100 years ago, they need to stop Glot in the past. Kira, Costa, and Jolly set out to stop Glot's plan, while Fima starts to question why Glot didn't track their movements, suspecting a trap. Just then, they're ambushed by pirates, but their friends come to the rescue. Victor finds a bomb on Jolly and uses it to defeat the attackers, though it also collapses part of a building. Frightened, Nikolai tries to save his friends, transporting them back to their time, but he himself returns to the future where a fierce battle against the pirates rages on. Jolly locks Kira in a room, taking the brunt of the attacks and ultimately succumbing to a fatal wound. Glot arrives, gloating that Jolly's death frees him from the oath he swore. In the past, Nikolai's friends rush to his apartment and encounter Glot. In the future, Nikolai, Kira, and Alice also arrive at the apartment, trying to move back and forth between timelines, causing reality to fluctuate. Under Glot's influence, Alice begins strangling Nikolai, struggling to resist his control. Just as Nikolai appears to die, Glot in the future gains possession of the Cassian. Heartbroken, Alice tries to revive Nikolai, and as her tears fall, he suddenly wakes. Glot mocks Alice, reminding her that he killed Kira in this very apartment a century ago. Furious, Nikolai claims his friends still have a chance to defeat Glot in the past. Enraged, Glot transports him to 2024 to witness it himself. But when they arrive, the future and past versions of Glot meet, causing a continuity collapse. Glot duplicates, then fades into nothing, fulfilling Nikolai's plan. With Glot gone, the Cassian activates on its own, catapulting Alice and Kira back to 2124, while Nikolai lands in an intertemporal space before being thrown back to 2024. He wakes up in a hospital, where a relieved Fema informs him that he successfully received the alien signal, restoring the original timeline. Nikolai realizes that the Cassian has left his body, preventing further time travel and meaning he'll never see Alice again. Meanwhile, Alice and Kira return to their home, where they find their father alive and well. It turns out Nikolai left a warning letter that was delivered 100 years later, allowing Kira's father to project a hologram in place of himself during the pirates' attack. Later, Nikolai and his friends plant a tree as a symbol of hope for the future, carving a heart into its bark. In the future, Alice discovers the message, realizing that Nikolai still remembers her, marking the movie's conclusion.